Hey, what's up, everyone? How you doing? Hey, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Gonna See My Friends, the podcast where we talk movies, memories, and everything in between. And as usual, I'm Steven. And with me, I have my faithful co-host, Tobias Maximus, a.k.a. Toby. What's up, Toby? How you doing?
Good morning. Happy birthday.
And we have, thank you. I appreciate that. And we have our special guest. At this point, it should be just an honorary third member, which is 100%. Scott Taylor. How you doing, Scott?
Fuck your birthday.
Oh, no! He said
it. Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
I don't get a nickname. I didn't get a nickname at all.
I was going to do the S.Cot. Or I can't remember what I had. I had something that I was going to act like it was off the top of my head, but I couldn't.
We'll fix that in post, people.
Yes, we'll fix it in post. Anyways, as always, we dive into every episode. We dive into the films that shaped us, the ones that we can't stop talking about, and maybe even a few we've never even seen before. From cult classics to new releases, we break it all down with plenty of laughs, hot takes, and the occasional friendly disagreement. So grab whatever you need to grab, man, and let's go hang out with my buddies Scott and Toby. What's up, guys? How's your Saturday going?
Snoochie bitches.
Answer now.
Good. It's good Saturday. It's a beautiful day. The sun is out. The pollen is flowing.
Oh, Jesus Christ! I'm pretty bad. I'm like Scott. I'm pretty bad when the allergies start flowing. So
too soon.
I don't have it yet. No, I mean, it's probably going to hit me today because it's supposed to be, what, 80 today? 78, 79, something like that?
Hell yeah. So, what a day. What a day to have a birthday, huh?
Oh, geez. Toby.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate that. It's got to be front center. Look at this.
Saturday birthday, man. They don't come around very often.
Just once every 6 or 7 years, I think.
That's about it, man. That's all you get.
That's all. And you know, at my age, there's no more driver's license or voting or drinking. You know, there's no what's it called?
You can do all those things at your age.
Milestone anymore.
Okay.
Well,
no pomp and frills at your ripe old age.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Okay.
There's just none of that stuff. Anyways, yeah. Anyways. Today we're going to be talking about Mallrats. This is the movie for me that kind of got me into Kevin Smith. And, of course, we did Clerks, actually, about a month ago?
Mm-hmm.
3 weeks ago? And big fan of that one. But since Scott is the guest here, Scott, when was the first time that this came onto your radar? Did you enjoy this movie?
Yeah, I got to say it was either VHS or HBO again.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of like Empire Records was. I definitely did not see this in the theater.
Yeah.
It would have been a rental, but at the time it would have been right up my alley, right? The humor of it, I would have been mid-teens. So it would have been just a laugh riot at that point.
Yeah. I think that was the same for me too. I don't think I saw it in the movie theaters. It was definitely a rental. And I think it was with roommates too, if I can remember correctly, but mid-90s. That was a while ago. Toby, how about you, man? When was the first time that you saw this?
You had mentioned in the intro movies that shaped us and that are near and dear to our hearts, and some that we hadn't seen before. I don't think that before this week had seen it actually all the way through before. I have obviously seen a lot of the parts and knew a lot of the gags and knew who the characters were. But as far as watching from start to finish, I don't remember ever having seen it from start to finish all the way through. So I was excited to knowing as Scott had turned me on to last time when we did the Clerks episode, the View Askewniverse, which it was a term that I was unfamiliar with. That as far as this View Askewniverse goes, this is the movie that I'm least familiar with. So when you said we're doing Mallrats this week, I was really excited because this is a chance for me to really familiarize myself with it. So as far as seeing it all the way through, not at all. Obviously familiar with it in the 90s and a lot of the gags. But yeah, first time all the way through was probably yesterday afternoon.
Nice. Good.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Scott, you introduced me to kind of the parlance of our times in terms of the Clerks and indie film, Kevin Smith, I should say, and his kind of universe. What is your overall impression of this second kind of installment in the filmography?
After rewatching it again this week, and it's probably been a while since I've seen it. Usually, when a new Kevin Smith movie comes out that's in line with the universe, I'll go back and I'll rewatch the prior ones. So maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, when I think the last one was, I don't know if it was Clerks 3 or I think it was Jay and Silent Bob Reboot was the last one. So I probably watched it around then, but I'm older, so I watch it at night and I fall asleep. So I get I'm more familiar with the first half of the movie than the second half. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
And so it's right after Clerks. It feels like a very carbon copy. It's like Waiting for Godot 2. You've got two guys trying to figure out their own, issues. One cares less, one cares more, and then they go about their day. And I'm a sucker for an all-in-a-day movie.
Yeah.
So it's very in line with Clerks, but just like we talked about with Empire Records, like that was kind of a glossy corporate kind of thing. This is definitely that step up of putting some glitter on the grit.
Yeah. I mean, I think, the thing that we were talking about with Clerks, my perspective on it was the whole kind of dialogue that Kevin Smith, which I think suits Clerks a lot better in Clerks than it does in this one, because I think I was watching this last night too. I was watching it. I put it on probably about 10 o'clock. And I own this movie. And for me, it goes back to fulfilling some nostalgia in my life, because when I watch it, the dialogue is more, let's see, how do I put this? The dialogue is so not subtle. It's just everything is, what's the word? Expository? Is it exposition? It's like everything is just told. There's no subtext. I'm sorry. That's what I'm trying to get to. There's no subtext in his dialogue. And I think, again, that suits Clerks better, because Clerks is a little more indie and it has that rawness to it. So for me, it was much more enjoyable in Clerks. And here I felt like there was just that verboseness of his characters. Every character, has a mouthful, and it just I don't know. That's what kind of takes me out of the movie. But again, I love to watch this movie just because of the silliness of it. I guess that's where I land in this. What about you, Toby? What's your opinion on that? How does it land with you, this movie?
How does this movie land with me?
Yeah.
How does it land with me? Not great. I was there. I don't know. It doesn't age well. It's not I don't think there's in 95, given the times, and I'm not going to judge it on some of the language that's used, and that's not the preferred nomenclature. They don't, this consumerism isn't what it used to be anymore. Our mall is on our phone now. And the mall that I remember first seeing one of those 3D prints that poor Willem is stuck trying to see through the course of the whole movie. I don't think the mall is not really a thing anymore. And
that's what I was going to say. Yeah.
Yeah. So as far as does it hold up? This Brodie's, he is mall fanatic. The mall is his place, and which is kind of weird. It's just kind of a weird thing. And I was like, were there mall people? I guess there were mall people. I don't know. So as far as does it hold up, it doesn't. And I think a lot of the humor in it is a little, especially coming off Clerks. I think there's a lot of stuff that's below Kevin in this. I almost want to say I didn't remember it being so scat humorish, and it was just a lot of butt and ass and anyway.
And boobs. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the boobs, throwback to say a Porky's or something like that. We got a lot of boobs that I wasn't necessarily expecting to see. I had forgotten that there were boobs in this movie, honestly. Anyway, I don't know that I have a real high opinion on it. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's what I was going to kind of bring up too in the course of this conversation, was the mall culture that is kind of amplified here in this movie, which is that there is, I hate to say kids today, but
Mm-hmm.
The mall scene is the malls are just not the malls that we had grown up with. We had the food court and all that kind of stuff. But I go to the mall now and it's like a swap meet. There's all these like little booths in the middle of the mall and they're just trying to sell you stuff all the time. And one guy owns like 5 of them, and he's going on. It's just a weird experience now. Do you still, hey, Scott, when was the last time you were at the mall?
Not very frequently anymore.
Yeah.
It's as a teenager, I grew up in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and there was a good transit system, so I could go into Harvard Square, and I went to school right by Harvard Square, so I was there for CD stores and that sort of stuff. We're all right there on my way home from school. Once I got my license and I was hanging out with friends, we'd drive a little further away and go to a mall.
Yeah.
And that would be our starting place. We go there and there'd be, like 2 restaurants that we would pick from to eat, quick service restaurants. And then we'd walk around and hit the same stores. Very similar. For now, my kid doesn't even ever want to go hang out at the mall. It's like, unless there's something specific, we're going for a store. That's it. One specific store, great. 2 specific stores, whatever it may be. But they're not going there just to hang out. We needed to get out and needed somewhere to do that hanging out, right?
Yeah.
The kids nowadays can do that from home.
Yeah.
Right? They don't need that. And it's the same reason why they're not getting driver's licenses anymore.
Yeah.
They don't need to get out to do that. And if they were to get out, they can't get away from their parents. We could get away from our parents by going to the mall and not be contacted by them. Kids having every movement tracked on an app on their phone. They can't get away from their parents. Their parents are going to call. Furthest I got from that was when I got a beeper, and my parents I'd be out late at night and they'd page me and I wouldn't call them back. And when I get home, I'd rush and I'd put the pager in a drawer somewhere. I'd be like, oh, I didn't have it with me. Kids nowadays, you can tell where they are right away.
Right.
So they're not trying to get out of the house because they're still going to be tracked. And they can communicate online just as well as if you were, you can trash talk someone playing Fortnite, just like you could trash talk your friend sitting in a food court about, the shoes they're wearing or decisions they made in school earlier that day.
Well, me and Toby did Fast Times at Ridgemont High, one of our first podcasts. And I think the point that I was bringing up, or maybe Toby had brought it up, was that, here, these kids, going on your point, Scott, of they don't need to get out anymore, which is, when I was 14, 15, you wanted to get out and you wanted to maybe get a part-time job because you wanted that money. And so you would get these jobs and get out just to get away from the house. And then you would take that money and you would go either to the mall or you would go somewhere where, you're saving up for something. But there was always like this thing of youth having this life outside of their house. And, malls today, like you said, now everything's on the phone, everything's online. So there's really no need to leave the house, which kind of calls back to Steve Dunn in Singles. I don't know if you've seen that movie, but it's like, at the end of that movie, he loses his job and he's in his apartment and it's all just pizza boxes and Chinese food cartons. And, he's telling his friend, in today's age, this is in 92, by the way, he's on today's age, there's absolutely no reason to leave the house. And now that's even more true than ever because you can get your food delivered. You can, you can get your clothes delivered, Amazon, all that kind of stuff. So, I think it's a totally different time now. So this movie, when this movie comes in, it doesn't have that impact that it had to us. I mean, I'm kind of more with Toby. Like, I love this movie again for the nostalgic reasons of just being a kid in that time and being in malls and hanging out in malls. But, other than that, I think this is his worst movie in the View Askewniverse. I don't know how you say that, but I mean, it harkens back to just the time that I don't think, I hate to sound old, but it's like, I don't think kids today understand. They have their own version of it now, but it's like you said, Scott, it was a time when you get away from your parents, you get away from your house, your neighborhood, maybe even, and just go hang out with your buddies. And so that kind of kicks me to the next kind of thing I wanted to talk about. Let's get into the movies here. Well, so the whole main thing of this is like you said again, Scott, the whole one day happens in one day, and we kind of kick off with what is it, Brodie and Shannon Doherty. What did you think of Shannon Doherty in this movie, Scott? Or Toby, sorry. Let me kick it to Toby. What did you think of Shannon Doherty in this movie?
Well, she's the star, I guess. I mean, it is. I mean, let's look at the cast. It's the bill that goes Shannon Doherty and R.I.P. By the way, I'd forgotten that we lost Shannon Doherty last year.
Yeah.
So she's the least. She's almost barely in the movie. She is the star. She's the time in 1995 when this movie comes out. She's in Beverly Hills 90210. And he kind of does a little, when they introduce all the characters in the title cards, her character's on the cover of a comic book, and it's Another Zip Code is the title. And I like that. I thought that was pretty clever of Kevin. I mean, you can ask me probably that same question about any of these characters, Steve. Was really trying to find a likable character of this cast. Yeah. They're kind of all just yelly, but Shannon, she can act. I mean, as far as the people who had acting chops, she's one of the between her and Jason Lee and Jeremy London, they can act.
Yeah.
They really kind of carry as far as the chops go, and they add some what's the word I'm looking for? The credibility, I guess, to it, but
some gravitas.
Yeah. Yeah, if you will. So as far as her she's got a mouth. Speaking of a mouthful, she has some lines in this movie where she is yelling at Brodie.
Yeah,
and it's nonstop. The one that goes on for like 30. There's like a 30-second monologue that she has yelling at him. I'm like, how did she memorize this tirade that she goes
in the
off
elevator?
On? So there was in the elevator. So I was impressed with what she did with what she was given in this. So hats off to Shannon Doherty. She kind of always plays that role. Her character wasn't super likable in 90210 either.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was, she was perfect for that part.
Well, what about you, Scott? Like, what's one character that kind of stuck out to you? Was it Shannon or was it Jason Lee or who was it?
I mean, to me, Jason Lee, first acting role. Right.
Oh yeah.
And it's just kind of a bigger than life character, just kind of, blows it out of the park there. The one thing that struck me about the movie and the acting, kind of all the dialogue there, it almost felt like it was a Looney Tunes movie.
Yeah.
You'd have all this dialogue, and then you'd have these little interjections of just absurdity where Jay and Silent Bob are doing their thing, and it's almost like a little intermission where it's their own thing going on, and it like a cartoon. You could picture it being Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd, messing around with Michael Rooker's character or the LaFour's security guard. You can see that there. So all the dialogue, the long diatribes with Shannon Doherty and everything they go through and talk about. If you had friends, you'd be sitting there, but come on, wrap it up. Let's Let me interject here. Like, you don't tell me everything and then, take a breath. Let me say something and we'll move on.
Well, every probably couple of weeks or so, I'm in this big 90210 kind of nostalgic run right now where every couple of weeks I'll watch like maybe 8-9 episodes and then I'll put it away. That's enough for another couple of weeks. But the thing is that I think the reason why you don't see Shannon Doherty in a lot, and bless her heart, R.I.P. She's not one I would consider that has a lot of range, because I think she plays this character in 90210. Yes. And in 90210, it grades. I mean, I remember seeing 90210 when it was out, and I'd watch it every week. And, I was a closet 90210 fan. I would never admit that to my friends at the time. It was it got old, and it was just her approach to Brenda Walsh.
She was the star of the show, wasn't? I'm sorry to interrupt. Well, wasn't she? I didn't really watch the show at all. I was aware it existed because it was the biggest show on Earth at the time when it was out.
Yep.
Well, I think it was her, and I think they were all a star of it at one point.
Okay, there was like an ensemble.
Depend on the storyline. You're right.
Okay.
So I think
she's listed as a series regular, and I'm like, she's not a series regular. She was like the number one as far as the female characters goes. She was top. She was the top girl of the group.
There was she had her own storylines, and everybody had at one point their own storyline.
Yeah, it was like 6 or 7.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And she had some big ones. But getting back to Mallrats, she was just playing Brenda Walsh, an extension of it, because I think she just had one approach. It seemed like she had one approach, and I saw my sister was big into Charmed, and she had the same kind of approach to that character as well. And so,
Steve, it's okay if you like Charmed. You don't have to say it was because of your sister. It's okay, man. Just like what you like.
I'm human and I need to be loved. Okay, that's all I got to say about that. But yeah, I mean, I think it kind of grated on me too. I mean, her whole monologue in the elevator was, "This guy already been," it's just like
super hurtful
like Scott was
things
saying,
too.
God, yeah, and so. Yeah. Anyways,
none of these relationships are healthy, right? None of them. Even the main relationship in it, it's clearly he's going to propose to her, but there's something that they've been on and off again because they say I'm tired of this breakup, back together.
Yeah.
None of it's healthy in there. The healthiest relationship is Jay and Silent Bob.
100%.
That's interesting you're saying that. Okay, so before we get any further into this deep dive, Tobe, you got the deets? You got some tales?
Oh, yeah.
What's going on?
I got the tales here. Just real briefly, too. It's written and directed by Kevin Smith.
Whatever you got.
It's Shannon Doherty as Renee, Jeremy London as T.S., Jason Lee as Brodie, Claire Forlani as Brandy, Ben Affleck as Shannon, Joey Lauren Adams as Gwen, and then you have Jason Mewes as Jay. Ethan Suplee, I think we're introduced to Ethan Suplee. He's Willem. Michael Rooker is Mr. Svenning. Stan Lee, of course, as himself. It was released on October 20th, 1995. It's rated R. It's 1 hour and 34 minutes. It's had a budget of $8 million, and worldwide it only grossed $2.1 million. So took a step back on that one. But the people seem to like it. 7.0 on IMDb. The critics were kind of 58% on the tomato meter, but the audience has it at 82%. So the people like it. And so that's essentially what you got there. And back to you.
Well, yeah. Oh, thank you. Well,
your thoughts.
Your thoughts. My opinion of Claire Forlani, and look, this it was kind of painful at times, but I remember during, I think it was around this time, or maybe it was Meeting Joe Black. I can't remember which movie she was promoting, but she was on the Tonight Show and Jay Leno, and I remember watching it one time with her on it, and she was the most uncomfortable, awkward. I was uncomfortable watching it. I mean, what's that, secondhand embarrassment? That's I mean, it was, man, she was just trying to be funny, and she told this story about walking her dog or something, and you can tell the audience was like, what the hell is she talking about? Like, it was just one of those moments. So I feel like, and then this one, there's a couple of instances too where, at the beginning where she's like, she just started swimming, and these kind of poses that it's just her and Joey Lauren Adams, which, they even share a scene.
They do.
It was just kind of uncomfortable. I mean, it was, and again, I love this movie. I own it. I watch it all the time, but it's just for different reasons. But, those two, is there any kind of, Scott, for you, like, is there any kind of like awkwardness in it for you, like, way, or what's the awkwardness for you in this movie, if there's any?
I don't know that I have a lot other than some of the acting, right?
Yeah.
Other than some of that, there's not a lot of emoting in it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's the amount of dialogue there, right? Because if there's a lot to get through, you're just trying to get through it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Versus actually savor the lines and actually make a meal out of them. You're just trying to get to the end. It feels like a lot of it was that, like you said, when she and Joey Lauren Adams have their thing, and Joey Lauren Adams goes on, in Chasing Amy and does a great job there.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So maybe it was just the writing in this movie that did it. It's got to be tough, to be afraid of the sophomore slump. It's got to be difficult going into it, just trying to reach that mark that you did before, that flood mark, and just trying to swing for that level.
Yeah.
It's got to be tough. But I think a lot of it had to do with the dialogue, those cringe moments.
Yeah, because again, it's better in Clerks. I mean, for whatever reason, maybe it was the direction, or maybe it was just the idea that it was either sink or swim,
Yeah.
but like you pointed out, Scott, like the emoting, there's just hardly any kind of chance to kind of fly in terms of acting or any kind of touching moment or having a moment that's really earnest. There's just no opportunity for that. And I always feel that was kind of the reason why I didn't really connect with this movie. I think that was kind of one of the many dings for me in this movie is why I just couldn't really kind of connect. And I connected in other ways because there's always that thing of like what you were saying earlier, Scott, which was the Looney Tune moment where you were going on with the scene and it was like the kid's back on the escalator. These running jokes that are always in it.
It's such a weird thing to be mad about.
Or his explanation on, comic book characters, or we have Stan Lee in here who has a really kind of heartfelt, as you can get in this movie, heartfelt moment with Brodie, and Brodie's still just obsessed with superhero body parts. But there was also a theme here that I was kind of talking about, if you can kind of get one, and I was kind of maybe I'm reaching, but it's like the theme of growing up and remaining childish, that kind of thing where at the end, Brodie kind of, I don't know if you can say growing up, but kind of realizes that he loves Renee. And any thoughts on that? I mean, anything you can kind of pick out of this that resembles a theme or kind of something you can want to talk about or share? Anyone?
I feel like the theme is 24 hours. Yeah. That's it. That's the theme. This is stuff that's happening in 24 hours.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of through line to it. You get the two guys storyline, right? But it's not as earnest as, say, Dante's feelings in Clerks, where you're feeling what he wants. And even then in Clerks, Dante's, emotionally cheating on his girlfriend. Right. So he's not the best of guys. And you can tell that in this, both of the guys, they're not their best.
Right.
They're not their best at all. So it is really tough to come up with like what's the theme? Is it losing innocence? Is it growing up? And it's just screw the man. I'm angry at her dad, and I'm going to show him type of situation. I know better, and it's just that angst at that age.
Yeah, there's a scene at the beginning which kind of almost gets to, and you can tell they're cracking up in the middle of the scene when he's talking about. When he farts while Renee's going down on.
Yeah, I noticed that too. They were almost broke. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it just kind of, that's where I kind of was like, okay, well, maybe this is kind of, I was reaching. But Toby, you brought up something before we sort of. Well, go ahead.
It's not a reach because I noticed it too, and that's the first one of the jokes where I think that the audience is going to go into Mallrats having already seen Clerks and kind of hope for a little bit more of the same, which they do get. In a sense that they get that it's not super clear unless you watched Clerks and you remember, and like Scott pointed this out when we were doing Clerks, he mentioned that Mallrats takes place the day before the events of Clerks. It's the day prior. And the opening scene with Claire Forlani and Jeremy London, when they're standing in the driveway about to leave for Disneyland, she mentions that the girl had died in the swimming pool, and that was the person who died in Clerks. And other than that, the worlds don't really collide other than Jay and Silent Bob being there. So you're kind of left to kind of put that together. I think if you're going into Mallrats, having already seen Clerks, the first interaction with TS and Brodie, and they kind of start cracking up, right? That's that scene. This is kind of a relationship thing. It's like, at what point do you start farting in front of each other? That's a very relevant thing to be talking about. And it's one of the few things that the points that I think that they tried to make in this was that opening point. And then it kind of just goes away from there. He's more concerned about what the people's etiquette is in the mall and the kids on the escalator. And this, it's not a food court. It's more of an eating stand because it's away from. I mean, there's a lot of this kind of like, what, who cares almost, I mean, these points about the mall, I guess were real poignant at the time. But I mean, if you show this to, like, Scott, if you show your daughter this, she's gonna be like, I'm not interested in this. I don't understand what's happening. I don't even care. Where even are they? So I don't know. That's kind of my takeaway from that.
Yeah. My brain is like 70% of these in my head rules that Brodie has, right? It's about etiquette in certain places and rules for places that no one else has. But I from observing everything else, know better than everybody else. Like the school pickup line, I can tell you all the rules that there are, written and unwritten, and all the people that don't follow them, and the anger that I put out there into the universe when it's not followed, and how much I own. This is how it is. Like I could write a Bible on it. So I understand Brodie's, having. I do agree that no, that's not the food court. It's clearly not the food court. The food court is a region. Just because something is food related, it's not food court.
And it was always the cookie stands too that were the autonomous.
True.
Whatever. Go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah, so you've got these rules that you make in your head, and he's just that rule follower. It's shouldn't be sitting on the escalator, and just all of those, even the rules not related to it. When he's talking about Superman not being able to impregnate Lois Lane, he's just this guy that lives by all these rules in his head. I mean, I can relate to that a lot because that's 70% of my day to day is getting disappointed by other people.
I remember,
and they don't know they're disappointing me. It's just all in my head.
Right.
I remember
Brodie
being that age
and
having, and I remember having those. That was what I aspired to, was have. Oh man, I want to be so into something, and of course I didn't know what it was, but it's like I want to be so into something that I have my own unique perspective on these things, and I think that's why. I feel like that's why I kind of go back to this movie every once in a while, is because, well, the silliness of it, of course, but it's also kind of I don't know, it's a kind of a peek into my own mind when I was that age. Was this, I just aspired to be like somebody like Brodie, because he seemed to have, no matter what it was, he seemed to still have his kind of shit together in terms of the things that he liked.
I see.
That he's still the pillars of what I like, and this and that and this and the other thing. But
That's
I mean, I watch it now, and I'm just like, okay, yeah.
Nowadays you call it gatekeeping, right?
Yeah,
it's gatekeeping.
Yeah.
He's the ultimate gatekeeper. Like he knows everything about those places and those things, and he's not going to let you deviate from what it should be.
Yeah,
and he's right. No matter, I don't think anybody can convince him of anything of a different point of view.
Right.
And the how did he and Renee stay together as long as they did? And she couldn't have been in a place where she was confused as to what the relationship was. He's letting people know nonstop. And regardless if it's what they're talking about, he's looking around. The next thing he sees, he's giving his opinion about it. I mean, you're always in the know when you're around Brodie. You're never going to be confused about where he lands on something. It's very black and white. And, how maybe she was just tired of that. I mean, she mentioned that in the tirade in the elevator, and she brought up the libido part. I mean, that's something that you probably don't play that card in your first fight in the relationship. You might wait until it's breakup time. And indeed she did, Yeah. It's interesting to see somebody so not set in their ways, but they have their convictions and they live by them. That's why I think, is that what you're saying, for you admire that in Brodie, Stephen, that he knows exactly who he is.
Well, he has that fierce integrity, and so, I've had friends like that. My friend Carlos, who passed away, he was like that. He was very, very, he had this kind of integrity that was just, it wasn't going to be dismantled in any way. It was, he was always, once he made a decision, that was it. And even if he's pointed out, oh, that's wrong, or you can't do that because nope, who cares? Sorry. Nope. And at times it was annoying because it was almost like a child, you'd have these fits and it'd be like, dude, this is not that deep, man. But that was like Brodie, it's like, he's talking about Superman. And if you disagree with him, right.
But
he
does bring
Toby,
up a good point, though. I mean, the fallopian tubes probably can't handle that. It was, I was like, exactly. I guess I'd never really thought of it that way. It's they're just having a throwaway conversation as they get their cookies and go and sit down at the bench. It's just kind of a throwaway line. It wasn't the whole scene, and then they moved on to the next topic. So Kevin, again, like in Clerks, uses this as a vehicle to get a lot of things off his chest. Like, I'm going to say all these things, and somehow there's a movie in here. That's what Mallrats felt like to me. In Clerks, he knew what the movie, where it was going. This one, he still had a lot of stuff he wasn't able to say 2 years ago, and you're going to hear it, and I'm going to piece this together. And along the lines, I'm going to have the coyote chasing the roadrunner, and here's drawings with Jay and Silent Bob and their elaborate plans to knock out LaFours and bring the whole stage crashing down. It's intermixed with the Looney Tunes stuff. So that is kind of the takeaway at the, and if you at the end, you're kind of like, okay, good soundtrack.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
You brought up a good point before we got on air about LaFours and some other character references or movie references. Why don't you elaborate on that? There's a lot of good movie
references. Yeah. All right. So the first movie reference that I didn't look any of this up. I certainly didn't pick up on it when I watched these scenes out of order, however many times before this, but watching it all the way through. The first one that came to mind was when they go to get in line at the comic book store. Or no, wait, who comes first? They meet Jay and Silent Bob.
Yeah.
Brodie and TS meet Jay and Silent Bob, and they point out the mall cop is LaFours, and he's got the white hat. And I'm like, LaFours was the marshal who was hunting Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and he wore a white skimmer. And I thought, that's such a specific name for a character, and I didn't look it up in the details. I have to imagine that Kevin Smith, that's an homage to Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and it doesn't come up in the movie Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. LaFours doesn't say a word. This mall cop all the way through. I'm waiting for LaFours to say something. He doesn't say a word. So at the end, I'm kind of left to go, maybe I'm right. I'm going to say I'm right on this one and just pat myself on the back. You hadn't heard that. You weren't aware that you've seen the movie probably.
Yeah.
And you were like, that was the guy who was hunting Butch Cassidy. He was the best in the business, and no one's ever gotten away from. And then they describe him. He's got 460 collars, and they're all convicted. And I'm like, I'm going to say it's Butch Cassidy reference.
Well, I've seen the two movies so far apart from each other that I couldn't make the connection. If I saw last week and then I saw Mallrats today, I would put But go ahead, keep going.
So the second one that comes pretty quickly after that is when they go to. There's a big line at the comic book store, and Brodie gets into kind of a back and forth with what is it, Dave, what's his name?
Steve Dave.
And Steve Dave at one point he's like, well, I'm just gonna, and Steve Dave says, you got to ask me nicely. And I was like, well, that's Colonel Jessup from A Few Good Men, which, knowing that A Few Good Men had come out in the early 90s, that's got to be an homage to A Few Good Men. And then a little bit later, and then there was, of course, a bunch of Star Wars lines. Those ones I understand, because knowing Kevin Smith, and he does, obviously a huge Star Wars fan. But the last one was, and forgive me if there was, where is it?
Yeah, the producer assistant.
The producer says, you called down the thunder, well, now you got it, is an obvious Tombstone reference. And I'm thinking, okay, so he's got Butch Cassidy, A Few Good Men, and Tombstone. These are classics. These are amazing, maybe perfect films.
Yeah.
And it kind of shone a light on how imperfect this movie was. And I was like, it's really interesting that he used these three references and tributes to these classics, but then gave us this, unfortunately. So, I was really that juxtaposition, like you had mentioned, that these movies couldn't be further apart. And maybe that is the joke. That this isn't going to be A Few Good Men, guys. It's nobody else's imagination.
Well, I think it's more of like, I think it's just like what Scott was saying or somebody was saying, I can't remember, but it's just this kind of just trying to get to the end. And so it's not real, or no, you were saying there was a movie that he had all the stuff that he wanted to say, but there was really no movie. It was just kind of like, I think that was just him throwing in stuff. Okay. Because he's a big pop culture guy.
Yeah, I appreciated the hell out of it because I I wrote them down. I'm all, and obviously that you called down the thunder. Well, now you're going to get, and now you got it as an obvious Tombstone reference. But the other two weren't super obvious, and I'm like, I see what you did there, Kev. I like that, and I really appreciated that. Obviously the Star Wars stuff. We haven't done Star Wars yet. We have to start doing Star Wars. My all-time favorite of that whole genre. If we're going to talk about View Askewniverse, there's also the Star Wars universe. That's my wheelhouse, and so I appreciate all the Star Wars references, which you get in, I believe, every View Askewniverse movie. There will be some Star Wars references. You'd be hard pressed not to find. There's one that's just straight up called Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, so it's right in the title of that one. But
what well, so Scott, what about you? What about are there any? What are some characters that stand out to you, or lines that stand out to you in this movie?
I think the key one is the escalator, right? You can't go on an escalator without saying that phrase. You have to. Yeah. That's the one that burns in your brain. But it's a bunch of little segments, right? A bunch of little lines here that are funny lines. Like Toby was saying, Clerks did it well, right? And Clerks had a environment where that's what you would do. That's what you would have those conversations.
Yeah.
Because it was just two dudes just in a place by themselves without working in all these other characters.
Yeah.
But the other lines I would say, you dumb bastard, it's not a schooner. It's a sailboat. Just Willem doing that.
Yeah.
There's another one that I use a lot that I would use if I'm in a mall or something like that. I'll say, I have no respect for people with no shopping agenda.
Yeah, exactly.
The Ben Affleck says.
He has a couple.
His whole character there, and his lines are just so good.
Yeah, I was just about to touch on that. Like, call me Donnie. Come on, who's your favorite new kid?
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, you can see that's where they start off their love relationship, him and Kevin Smith. You can tell that even in some of the deleted scenes when he's getting arrested at the end, like he's improvising a little bit about it.
Yeah,
he calls the cop dad. He's like, "Come on, Dad." And you can see that they just would have this relationship that just continues on and on and on.
Yeah, he's so good in these movies, and I think a lot of times when I watch this movie too, I think Scott or Toby was kind of bringing up the idea that the main characters are like Jason Lee and Shannon Doherty kind of carry this movie, but I would throw in Ben Affleck in that too, especially the swarminess of his characters.
Sucks. Shannon sucks.
But throwing it back to the recurring kind of one-liners or whatever, it's like, I'm gonna screw somebody in a really uncomfortable place, and everybody's like, "Oh, you mean like in the back of a Volkswagen?" I don't know where that came from, but it's always gives me a little chuckle, and especially
it feels like Mel Brooks, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And anyways. And this is also too. This movie is also pre-Marvel Stan Lee, and he has his little bit in there. I always think that he's such. You could tell that he's not really. Well, you could tell he's not an actor, but because he walks in the frame like he's walking somewhere, and he's like, "Look, a schooner or whatever," when he walks in with Willem. But then he exits either this way or like the opposite.
He just turns around and walks off stage. Yeah, it is interesting that it's like a lot of people, like Wolverine comes up a lot, and I was a Wolverine guy. Spider-Man, Wolverine, the Punisher's on the wall in Brodie's room, but a lot of people didn't, everybody knows that Wolverine his name is Logan and has adamantium claws and was Weapon X, and this all comes out when you first meet Jay and Silent Bob in this movie. And in 1995, unless you're reading the comic books, this is going right over your head. No, this isn't common knowledge stuff. But now everybody's like, you show the kids today, and they'd be like, "Wow, you guys were talking about that 30 years ago?" Yeah, 100% we were. And Stan
we didn't
Lee
have
was
the movies.
No, we didn't have them. And Stan Lee
Yeah.
wasn't a billionaire at that point either. He was strictly a comic book guy. And his story that he tells TS, or not TS, TS kind of sets him up. Go tell him some BS story about the girl that you lost. And it's really heartfelt. And so as far as a guy who's, he's been in all of his own movies, he was kind of known for he's got a cameo in I think every single one up until he passed away. He wasn't an on-screen guy. You kind of had to know who he was.
Yeah.
He wasn't in the the Lego video games. Stan Lee pops up in those as a character in the video games, and that's kind of exciting. You get to be Stan Lee in a lot of these video games. So yeah, he wasn't a household name for sure.
Yeah.
It's good to see him. He looked good in this. That beard,
Yeah.
he's a good looking fella.
There's a picture of him, I think shirtless of Stan Lee, but he's kind of posed like that Burt Reynolds picture, lying to the side.
Oh, really?
From what I remember, there is a picture of him kind of like that. He's a good looking dude.
Absolutely.
But from what I understand, he Kevin Smith was going to just get an actor to play a role that was like Stan Lee, and one of the producers was like, I think I can get Stan Lee for you. I think I can get him to do it. And so Stan Lee, they asked him, and he called back, and he told Kevin, he's like, I think I should have more lines. And that's the most Stan Lee thing ever. That he was just his biggest salesman, right?
Yeah.
Stan Lee was always about Stan Lee and what can he do? And it was just a great role. It was just that opening place for Stan Lee to then come into the eyes and hearts of everybody.
Oh yeah, you wanted more Stan Lee. You wanted him. You didn't want to wait an hour for him to show up. You just need more. We needed more Stan, I think.
Yeah, definitely, man. I think it was such a relief when Marvel started releasing after the initial Spider-Man movies, and having his cameo in each one. That was really cool. And did you guys ever see the documentary on his life? I think it's on Disney Plus. It's pretty cool. I mean, I think he comes across as like the real nice guy that you probably see, or that you can kind of deduct from his roles. But I think there's a little. He grew up in a generation where, you just have all the things of he's really driven at the expense of his family, and it's just interesting. It's interesting to see. I highly recommend it.
I have a funny meeting Stan Lee story.
Oh yeah.
At a convention I went. It was at Big Wow in San Jose. Years and years ago. And I was like, Stan Lee was getting older, and I was like, you know what? I have to go get an autograph from Stan Lee. I have to go do this. So I was like, back then it was cheap. It was maybe $50 for an autograph, or maybe 75, maybe the same for a photo. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. And so the autograph process was just you hand the book to someone, they slide it to him, he signs it, slides it off. So you're not even within like 8 feet of him, right? It wasn't personable at all. But then the photo part, you would get in a line and just wait in this long line. And the person in front of me, this is my fault. I'm much more aware now of who's in front of me and behind me in lines when I do stuff like that. You don't want an interesting person in front of you because they're going to be enveloped with that person. This person was dressed full head to body, full head costume of a horse superhero. Full on. If you think of a furry, picture a furry costume, full on head, full on thing, horse superhero cape. And we're waiting in line. We get up there and he jumps out. And of course, he's not talking to Stan, but he's very, moving around, very animated with his gestures. And Stanley's like, oh, hi, true believer. Oh, it is talking to him about it. And then he takes the picture with him, and Stan's sitting in a seat. So he's not moving. He's just sitting there. And you walk up, take the picture. And then it's like Lloyd Dobler when he's watched the picture with Diane Court. You just walk up behind them, take the picture, and then you move on. And so he's infatuated with this horse guy, talking to him, and takes the picture. Horse guy walks off and says like, oh, bye. And then I step up right then. I'm trying to be this efficient, good boy, just keep the line moving, get up in my space. I throw out my Spider-Man fingers, get ready for my picture behind him. And he's still talking to his handler. He's like, hey, get me a copy of that, because we should put that up on our social media or whatever.
No.
And the camera guy, I'm looking at the camera guy, and the camera guy's like, what the hell? Click. So he takes the picture, and then good little rule follower, I can move along without saying anything to Stan Lee. And Stan Lee goes, oh, was there someone behind me? And I look over and I turn around as I'm walking away, and I wave, and he just waves, and I keep going. And that's
What's the picture? We got to see the picture.
Hold on 1 second.
Yeah. I love it.
I saw that coming, dude. I'm like, no.
Oh, yeah. I was like, I hope. Yes.
Oh, it looks normal. Yeah, okay.
Oh, that's amazing.
So you can see him trying to do Spider-Man fingers.
Yeah. Well, it looks. I was expecting him to be like
fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
yeah, he's not even looking at the camera.
Looks,
yeah, you're like, great $50 that I just spent. The guy never even looked at me. You're all, thanks a lot, horse head.
Yep. So then I started looking, and the good thing about being in line is like I could find pictures of this horse guy at that convention online, and I'd be like right behind him in line, looking at my phone or something, trying to look away. Well, people are like, "Oh, can I take a picture of you?" I'm just shirking away. So that's my Stan Lee meet story.
That's fantastic. I love it.
Definitely. I was definitely expecting a different pose from him. I because the way you were telling the story, I was like, "What's going to be him like going?"
Mm-hmm.
And you're going something.
Yeah.
But it looks good. I mean, it doesn't look like he wasn't paying attention. Let's see. So, any final thoughts? Oh wait, we got to do the Klay Thompson Game 6 award. Do you guys have one for this? No.
Can I make the Klay Thompson the soundtrack?
Sure. Yeah,
that's a good call. Yeah. Great soundtrack.
Yeah.
Soundtrack is so it's probably the soundtrack that I've listened to the most.
Wow.
I have the CD probably in my car right now. Like Empire Records, it's amazing that this is like just like 2 years before Empire Records, and what's supposed to be the quote unquote alternative music scene.
Right.
Like that's again the glamour and the put some glitter on it type of movie and album. This had some really good alternative rock stuff and bands that were right off of their high points, right? So you had Bush that had within the previous year 16 Stone came out.
Yeah.
Same thing with the Blue Album with Weezer. Same thing with Silverchair. Silverchair had been, I think, May of the year that this movie comes out. Their album came out.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of bands on there just hitting their stride.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because that for me, that was compared to Empire Records. This was the more legitimate sound of what the music was sounding like at the time. I feel like with Empire Records, it was like, oh, we can't get Bush. Let's get a band that sounds like Bush, but this, it had Bush and it had Silverchair. And also he puts it in every scene a little more subtle than Empire Records. So it wasn't the focus wasn't on the soundtrack, but you could still hear the soundtrack. And it made me, I remember when the first couple times I watched this movie, I was like, wait, what is that? What band is that? It made me want to look. I love that sound. What is it? Oh, that's Bush.
Yeah.
And it kind of drove me to the soundtrack as opposed to Empire Records, where it kind of tries to beat you over the head with the soundtrack. But yeah, the soundtrack's great. How about you, Toby? You got your Game 6?
Well, and just
or do you want to talk about the soundtrack?
Well, just the one thing that he does do is it's a phenomenal soundtrack, and you're in a mall, so it's not going to be a great soundtrack. And there's the Muzak version of "Girl from Ipanema" that's playing while everybody's waiting for the elevator. So you got like your typical right? I don't know that the Muzak version of "Girl from Ipanema" has been played since that because it's like kind of a cliche thing to it's more of like a 70s almost Muzak version of. Anyway, my Game 6, I'm gonna go with Michael Rooker. I love Michael Rooker. This character is brutal, and it sucks. And I'm glad that he got stink palmed, and that he's throwing up for the final scene, and that he got what was coming to him. But I'm a big fan of Michael Rooker. I think he's phenomenal. I loved him in The Walking Dead. Everybody else hated him. They were like, oh, they were happy when Merle died and all that. I was a Merle fan. I thought he played that role incredibly well. I think he plays this role really well. He's silly and over the top. We got a butt shot. That's, what's up? What's not to love, right? So I'm going to go with Michael Rooker, shaving his head for the role for no reason at all. All around, he's a good sport. He's just a really, really good sport, and he's still doing it. He's in, speaking of Marvel movies, he's in the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Guardians of the Galaxy, yeah.
Guardians of the franchise there. Hats off to Mikey Rooker there. You? Who's yours?
That's
yours,
a good
Steven?
One. Mine, I think it's gonna have to be Priscilla Barnes, Ivana.
Boy,
when they go to
how about that?
With
she was
the third nipple.
Yeah.
Give me 3 reasons why you chose her, Steve.
It is
Well,
kind of hard to
to
look
go
at, but
from
that you're like, oh god, yeah, it is uncomfortable. I think, Brodie doesn't mind, but TS is like, oh my god.
Oh, you have 3 nipples? I didn't even notice. What do you mean you didn't notice?
Oh god, and I was like,
Well, to
why
go
do
from
I?
Three's Company.
Yes, the girl from Three's Company. I was like, who? Why do I?
Yeah,
She's so
and to
familiar.
go
She's
from
so
that,
pretty. Yes, and she was in Three's Company
well,
after Suzanne Summers left the show.
yeah, and
Yeah.
to go from that to this was, I was like, oh well, I remember thinking, seeing her in that and thinking like, oh wow, cool man, because I remember me and Scott went to a WonderCon back in 2009, 10. I can't remember when it was, but we went to a WonderCon and we ran into Erin Gray, who was. Do you remember this, Scott?
I do. I do.
Yeah.
You got a picture with her, I think.
No,
I got her autograph. I think
autograph.
Yeah, her picture was. But she was sitting next to what's the guy from Independence Day and Full Metal Jacket?
Adam Baldwin.
Yeah, Adam Baldwin. She was next to his booth, and everybody was at his booth. I mean, it was just overcrowded, and she was sitting at the booth next to him, and she was just kind of sitting there, like like.
No, I got the autograph from that day because I got Adam Baldwin's autograph while he was getting Erin Gray's.
I saw him again just about in 2017 when at the fairgrounds in Santa Rosa had the Comic-Con there, which is coming up again. And I was like, hey, man, I remember seeing you at a WonderCon, and I asked you how it was working with Stanley Kubrick, and you replied, I don't know, I was just too drunk. And he's all, oh, no, I didn't say that, did I? And I'm like, I know you were kidding, man. Don't worry about it. Okay. But anyways, so the Erin Gray, she was a big actress in the 80s sitcoms and Buck Rogers and Silver Spoons and I'm always rooting for these people to kind of like come back. I'm kind of like the Quentin Tarantino. I want them to come back and act. So when I saw Priscilla Barnes in this movie, I was like, okay, cool, man. She's still relevant and whatever. So yeah, that's my Game 6 Klay Thompson award right there.
Very nice.
So all right. Well, any final thoughts? What do you guys think about Mallrats? Final thoughts.
If you want to wrap up kind of the feeling of Mallrats without watching Mallrats, you can go on YouTube and there's a copy of the MTV movie premiere party of Mallrats. And it is possibly the most awkward 20 minutes that I have ever seen.
I would see it.
At least in a long time. It's hosted by Kennedy, the VJ Kennedy.
Sure.
And it's all these people, interacting with her, and then they'll show movie clips, and then there's some Jay and Silent Bob kind of tomfoolery where they're trying to get into the movie premiere. Right? They're like, but we're on the poster and all this stuff. But she interviews Kevin Smith and Stan Lee and Jason Lee, and it's so awkward. I don't know if it's Kennedy specifically that's causing that to happen, or if it's just the environment, but it is so weird. She starts fake stink palming people on the red carpet, like shaking their hand and all this stuff. It is so weird and awkward, and you can see all the people are just either not familiar with like how to interact with this type of environment, or they're so familiar with it that they're like, this isn't normal. This isn't the normal Hollywood premiere thing. Sponge plays, at the event, another great person on the band on the album.
Yeah.
So if you want to sum up Mallrats without watching it, you can go watch that, and it's kind of just about as awkward, and you get to see lots of kind of the best clips of it along with all of that weirdness.
Yeah. Kennedy had that effect on a lot of bands, I think, or a lot of things on MTV. Mm-hmm. I remember her interviewing, I think it was Nirvana, and it was pretty awkward. Or maybe it was the Foo Fighters. I can't remember, but it was pretty awkward. And just like, Jesus. Yeah. Your thoughts, Toby?
I think I think you know where I'm coming from on this. If you're going to do the View Askewniverse, it's a must. You have to. This comes the day before Clerks, so maybe watch them in that order if you're going to do that. If you're a fan of Joey, Lauren Adams, and Claire Forlani, and you've had crushes on both of them, guilty as charged over here, you got to see this movie. And if you're a Jay and Silent Bob, there's a lot of fun Jay and Silent Bob hijinks in this. And Stan Lee. So if you're looking for story, not a whole lot. If you want to go back and see what malls look like, it was filmed in a mall. It's filmed in a mall far away from, it's supposed to be in the same town as where they were in New Jersey. They filmed this, I think, in Minnesota somewhere, which was some
Yeah.
great big mall. And they filmed it in a second mall, and the dirt mall was actually torn down, I think, after this because it is a dirt mall, and it might have been closed at the time, but it's long gone now. But that mall, the Valley something mall, Valley Fair Mall, something like that, is still there, from what I understand. It is what it is. I give it I'll go 4 stars on it, 4 out of 10. Yeah,
Right.
I mean, there's some chuckles, but yeah, my least favorite of the Kevin Smith movies.
Yeah, I'd have to kind of jump on the bandwagon here and say it was kind of, aside from a few parts, a few like Jason Lee and Ben Affleck, I think those are my 2 favorite, just because of how swarmy Ben Affleck is and Jason Lee, how charismatic he is. But yeah, I mean, I love it because I'll revisit it every couple of months, maybe, just if I need to put something on before I go to bed, or just if I want some chuckles, I'll put it on. But yeah, I prefer Clerks over this one for sure. I love Clerks. In fact, I think I'm going to try and buy it. And yeah, I mean, I think it like you guys had kind of summed it up already. I mean, what it lacks in story, it kind of makes up in other kind of silliness. And I give it out of 5. I'll give it maybe 2.5. So yeah, for what that's worth.
Okay.
But yeah. So thanks, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me. And
yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks
Happy birthday.
for my audience, our audience. If you like and subscribe, it really helps out the channel. And, put maybe what you think about Mallrats in the description. Give us your opinion. And we're always reading them. And yeah, thanks again. And we'll see you again next week. Thanks, guys.